Have you ever felt like your past mistakes or your current situation have disqualified you from doing something great? Have you ever felt too small, too weak, or too ordinary for the challenges ahead? If so, the story of Moses is for you. It's a story that starts not with the hero, but with a baby in a basket, floating down a river in a time of incredible danger. Long before Moses ever led a nation, his story began in a time of fear. The people of Israel were slaves in Egypt, beaten down and oppressed. The Egyptian king, Pharaoh, was so afraid of their growing numbers that he gave a terrible order. Every Hebrew baby boy was to be killed. It was one of the darkest times imaginable, but one mother refused to give up. For 3 months, she hid her newborn son. When she couldn't hide him any longer, she took a leap of faith. She placed him in a waterproof basket and set him gently in the Nile River. Can you imagine the fear and the hope she must have felt? That basket floated right to the spot where Pharaoh's own daughter was bathing. She saw the baby, felt compassion, and decided to raise him as her own son. That baby was Moses. Right from the start, God was at work, turning a moment of certain death into a story of miraculous deliverance. Moses grew up as a prince of Egypt. He had the best education, wore the finest clothes, and lived a life of absolute comfort and privilege. But deep down, he knew he was different. He knew he was a Hebrew. One day, that internal conflict became an external crisis. He saw an Egyptian soldier brutally beating one of his own people, an Israelite slave. In a flash of anger, Moses killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. But secrets like that don't stay buried for long. When word got out, Moses was terrified. He wasn't just a prince anymore. He was a murderer and a fugitive. So he ran. He fled into the wilderness, leaving behind his title, his power, and everything he had ever known. In one moment, the life he thought he was destined for was completely gone. Moses spent the next 40 years in the desert, working as a humble shepherd. Think about that transition from a prince in a palace to a shepherd in the middle of nowhere. It might seem like a demotion, like his life was wasted, but this quiet, hidden season was actually his training ground. God was shaping his character, teaching him patience, humility, and reliance. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes God prepares us in the quiet, hidden places before he ever uses us in the public ones. Then one day, after 40 years of silence, something extraordinary happened. While tending his sheep, Moses saw a strange sight. A bush that was on fire, but it wasn't burning up. As he cautiously approached, a voice called out from the flames. It was God. God told him to take off his sandals, because he was standing on holy ground. God revealed himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of his ancestors. Then, he said something that would change the course of history. He said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt, and I am sending you, Moses, to go to Pharaoh and lead them to freedom." What was Moses' reaction? Did he jump at the chance? No, he didn't. He was filled with doubt. He made excuse after excuse. He said, "Who am I to do something like that? I'm not a good speaker. What if they don't believe me?" He felt completely and totally unqualified. But God's response is one of the most powerful promises in all of Scripture. He didn't say, "Moses, you're more talented than you think." He didn't say, "Don't worry, you can do this." Instead, he gave a simple, profound promise. "I will be with you." That was it. God's presence was more important than Moses' abilities. God wasn't looking for a perfect hero. He was looking for a willing heart. So, with that promise, Moses returned to the land he had fled. 40 years earlier, he stood before the most powerful man in the world, Pharaoh, and delivered a simple, bold message from God. "Let my people go." Pharaoh's response was predictable. He laughed, he refused, and he made the slaves work even harder. This set the stage for a divine showdown. Moses went back to Pharaoh again and again, and each time Pharaoh said no. So God sent a series of 10 plagues upon Egypt. Each plague was a direct challenge to the power of the Egyptian gods, showing that the God of the Israelites was the one true God. The Nile River, a source of life for Egypt, turned to blood. Complete darkness fell over the land. Hail and locusts destroyed their crops. Still, Pharaoh's heart remained hard as stone. Finally, God announced the 10th and final plague. He said that the firstborn son in every Egyptian household would die, but he provided a way of escape for his people. He instructed the Israelites to sacrifice a lamb and paint its blood on the doorposts of their homes. When the angel of death passed through Egypt that night, it would pass over any house marked by the blood. This event, forever known as the Passover, became a powerful symbol that deliverance comes through sacrifice. That night, a great cry went up throughout Egypt. Pharaoh's own son died. His hard heart finally broke. He summoned Moses and told him to take the Israelites and leave immediately. After more than 400 years of bondage, they were finally free. Moses led a massive crowd of people out of Egypt. Their journey to the promised land had begun, but their freedom was immediately tested. Just a few days later, Pharaoh changed his mind. He gathered his entire army, his chariots and horsemen, and chased after them. The Israelites soon found themselves in an impossible situation, trapped. In front of them was the vast Red Sea. Behind them was the furious Egyptian army. The people panicked. They cried out to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" But Moses stood firm in his faith and told them, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Then God told Moses to do something that seemed crazy: stretch his staff out over the water. As Moses obeyed, a mighty wind began to blow, and the waters of the Red Sea parted, creating a path of dry ground right through the middle of the sea. The Israelites walked through, with walls of water on their right and on their left. When the Egyptian army charged in after them, God told Moses to stretch his staff out again. The walls of water collapsed, and the entire army was washed away. In that one incredible moment, God didn't just rescue his people, he completely destroyed the enemy that held them in bondage. It's a timeless lesson. God makes a way where there seems to be no way. You might think that after a miracle like that, the people would never doubt God again. But the wilderness is a tough place. After the initial celebration, the reality of their situation set in. They were free, but they were also hungry, thirsty, and tired. They started to complain, even saying it would have been better to be slaves in Egypt. But even in their doubt and complaining, God was faithful. When they were hungry, he provided a miraculous food from heaven called manna. When they were thirsty, he had Moses strike a rock, and water gushed out. This part of the story teaches us a crucial lesson. Freedom from slavery doesn't mean freedom from hardship, but it does mean that God will provide for our needs, even when we are ungrateful. It was during this time in the wilderness that Moses went up on Mount Sinai to meet with God. There, amidst thunder, lightning, and smoke, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. These weren't just a random list of rules designed to restrict the people. They were a gift. They were a guide for how to live in a healthy relationship with God and with each other. They provided the moral and spiritual foundation for their new identity as a free nation, teaching them how to love God and love their neighbors. For the next 40 years, Moses led this difficult, complaining, and yet chosen group of people through the desert. It was not an easy job. The people constantly rebelled. They lost faith. They even built a golden calf to worship while Moses was on the mountain with God. Moses himself was not perfect. He made mistakes, and one of those mistakes cost him the chance to enter the promised land himself. But through it all, Moses remained faithful to the calling God had given him. He interceded for the people, argued with God on their behalf, and never gave up on them. He was a leader defined not by his perfection, but by his persistence and his willingness to keep going. Near the end of his long life, God took Moses up on a mountain overlooking the promised land. He saw the beautiful, fertile land that God had promised to his ancestors, the destination of their long and difficult journey. He wouldn't get to enter it, but he had fulfilled his mission. He had led God's people out of slavery and brought them to the very edge of their new home. The Bible tells us that God himself buried Moses in a secret place, and that there was never another prophet in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. So what does this ancient story mean for us today? It's filled with powerful lessons. It shows us that God can use anyone, even a fugitive with a speech impediment, to do extraordinary things. It teaches us that our past mistakes don't define our future. God is a God of second chances, and third chances, and 40th year chances. It reminds us that God hears the cries of the oppressed, and is passionate about justice and freedom. And it shows us that true freedom isn't just about being released from something. It's about being released to someone, to a life of trust and obedience to God, even when the path ahead is uncertain. Maybe today, you feel like Moses in the desert. You feel overlooked, forgotten, or that your best days are behind you. Or maybe you feel like Moses at the burning bush, with God calling you to do something that feels way too big and scary. Maybe you're standing in front of your own Red Sea, an impossible situation with no way out. The story of Moses encourages us to remember who God is. He is the God who makes a way. He is the God who provides. He is the God who promises, "I will be with you." Your journey through the wilderness might just be the very thing that's preparing you for the promise that lies ahead. God specializes in deliverance, and your story is not over yet. Thanks for watching. If this story encouraged you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content that explores faith and life. See you in the next video.